For over 200 years, Paris has been home to the Ménagerie du Jardin des Plantes, quite simply one of the most beautiful zoos I've ever seen. The Menagerie is one of the oldest zoos in the world, and now in the 21st century, it's home to both amazing animals and incredible architecture. We're here at the entrance, let's go in and take a look. The first gorgeous building is the Rotunda, which sits in the centre of the zoo and is surrounded by habitats, but we're going to take a left from the entrance and check out the red pandas. I love it when zoos put red pandas right next to the entrance because, being mainly nocturnal, if you come into the zoo first thing in the morning, that is your best chance of seeing them, and that is certainly what happened today. It's a beautiful morning here in Paris, and we got 3 red pandas chomping away on some leaves here. Next to them is a habitat for the binturongs, although sadly they were already asleep. They're another nocturnal animal. It's always a pleasure to see them, and indeed smell them. You don't need to get particularly close to a binturong to know that they smell very much like popcorn. And these 2 enclosures demonstrate something that's really fun. You can see into the zoo from the gardens themselves. So even if you're just walking through the gardens and you don't have a ticket, you can see the red pandas and a few of the other animals from the paths. Back at the Rotunda, which no longer houses animals inside it, instead it's surrounded by beautiful little enclosures like this for the blue crane, along with another one for the white-naped crane. Really nice planting and foliage in here. It's got a very garden-like feel. And on the other side, there's even giant tortoises. These are the Aldabra giant tortoise, to be precise. You can see some of the beautiful planting there. Let's move on into the rest of the zoo. Having opened in 1794, the Menagerie is very different to most modern zoos. There are no huge biogeographic zones here. Instead, the amazing architecture from all those years ago has been retained, upgraded and improved to provide much more modern habitats for the animals. This is the Carnivore House, which once housed pretty much every big cat you could imagine. These days, the number of animals it holds has been reduced. Most of the animals are much smaller, but not all of them. They still hold one big cat in here, the Amur leopard, hailing from the Amur region where Asia meets Europe. And as stunning as this building is, I've got to say, I feel like this is still too small. There's an indoor, of course, which is absolutely gorgeous, and we'll see that in a minute. But first, it's something you don't see very often in zoos, the beautiful clouded leopard. This is one of my favourite cats. It's absolutely stunning. And I think it's a much better fit size-wise for this habitat. There's loads of climbing in here. Clouded leopards are very arboreal, they love to climb. And this one is demonstrating exactly that. It's a real treat to be able to see them climbing as close as we are to them here. And next to them is possibly the most personable animal we're going to see today, the yellow-throated martins. These 2 were running around their habitat like crazy, having all sorts of fun. Again, loads and loads of climbing for them in here, along with their indoor area, and I think this is the kind of animal that this building is still really well suited to, rather than lions and tigers and things like that. One of the most stunning of the cats, the caracal, also lives here, and as this one makes their way into the indoor parts of the building, we'll follow them in and take a look at it. Wow, this is one of the most beautiful cat houses I have ever seen. It is awe-inspiring in here. The enclosures behind the glass are probably not the most attractive I've seen, but it's always a real struggle when you're a zoo with buildings hundreds of years old that are of architectural significance. You are not allowed to just tear them down and build a new habitat. You have to make do with what you've got. And in this building, I think with the possible exception of the leopard, the Menagerie has done a really good job. Next to the Carnivore House is a small section of animals from Australasia, including the magnificent southern cassowary and one of the world's rarest parrots, the Rhea. They live in this very old-school aviary, but being mainly ground-dwelling and pretty small, I think it's actually pretty suitable for them. And then there's the tree kangaroo house. This houses the absolutely adorable Goodfellows tree kangaroo that lives in the forests of Papua New Guinea. Pretty sizable enclosure for them here. Just look at him, what a cutie. This is the first time I've ever seen Goodfellows tree kangaroo. They were a no-show at Chester Zoo when we did our tour there. And if you're enjoying these tours, don't forget to hit the like button and make sure you subscribe so you can catch the next one. There's a smaller enclosure next to the tree kangaroo, the magnificently named Big Hairy Armadillo. These guys are absolutely adorable. They are very much not an Australasian animal. They live in South America. But regardless of the theming mismatch, it's an absolute treat to see these. Never seen one of these armadillos in a zoo before. They are really striking with the long hair covering their armor plates, and great to watch them just trotting about their habitat. It's not the biggest, but there's a lot of substrate for them to dig in and lots for them to do, and I really enjoyed it here. Moving on from the Australasian section, we encounter this very inquisitive Asian houbara. He's got really beady eyes. When he's looking at you, you really know he's looking at you. And then we move into the first of the zoo's hoofstock collections. The first of which is for the Baral, or blue sheep, which hails from the Himalayas. They are really interesting looking. almost got a bit of an ibex kind of look to them. These enclosures are absolutely ancient. These rock piles and houses have sat here for probably 200 years now. We have markhor here, with the horns of the male being amongst the most impressive in the whole of the animal kingdom, I think. The fencing is new, which is why they've got much more space than they used to have. I'd love to know how many different hoofstock they used to have in this area. The little kind of European style houses in the background as well, they're really attractive. And next to the markhor are Chinese Gaur. These tiny little ungulates live in the mountains of Southeast Asia. There's only 20 or so zoos in the world that hold these. Real treat to see them. Next to them is an animal we see a lot more of, Givolti's horse, with this beautiful ancient kind of European forest dwelling as their stables. Really like that. We'll make our way to the western end of the zoo here and one of the most striking enclosures for flamingos. The way these beautiful scarlet birds are presented in the middle of a garden-style lawn with pools for them to wade in, willows hanging in the background, surrounded by a low wall that you can sit on and get right next to them is really spectacular. And speaking of spectacular, next to the flamingos is La Nouvelle Faisanderie, an exquisite birdhouse which opened in 1881 to house tropical birds. Featured heated indoor as well as outdoor enclosures, which was recently converted to hold small mammals like these adorable golden lion tamarins. These amazing little monkeys live exclusively in the forests around Rio de Janeiro, and it's estimated there's less than 5,000 of them left in the world, and the Ménagerie is part of the captive breeding program, which is breeding around 500 of them in captivity in order to protect this endangered species. I absolutely love this enclosure. I think it suits them perfectly. They've got so many little trees to climb in, little bushes to explore, a pond. They seem to be having a really good time climbing around in here. And next to them is another adorable little monkey, Gueldi's monkey. These are another type of tamarin. I just caught one scampering around in this beautiful old building. They do still hold birds here as well in the other end. We've got Sclater's crowned pigeon here. I think it's the first time I've ever seen these not in a walkthrough, but lovely to see them all the same. And in the final aviary in this building is the Vietnamese pheasant. Next to the aviary is a gorgeous little grotto for Azara's agouti. If you follow the channel, you'll know I'm a big fan of agouti. They are small, cute, adorable, and quite cheeky if they're in the mood. But having seen them in the wild, these guys really like to run around, and this little grotto does not give them the space to do that, which is a bit of a shame. Next to them is the Visayan warty pig, in the kind of muddy, forested enclosure that you'd expect to see them in. And next to them is one of the most charismatic members of the mongoose family, the yellow mongoose. There's one here just popping out of his little burrow. These guys have got a lot more space than the agoutis. I think this is a much more suitable habitat. These mischievous relatives of the meerkat live in southern Africa, and they're mainly insects, small birds, reptiles, and amphibians, and they'll take eggs when they can get them as well. And after a short burst of activity, there they go, back into their den again. We're going to head to the zoo's vivarium now, but before we get there, we've got something very exciting: the Tasmanian devil. These iconic little animals are nocturnal, so it is a rare treat to see one up and about in the middle of the day like this. I didn't see any evidence of it being feeding time, so perhaps they just fancied a little trot around the enclosure. They've got two enclosures next to each other here. I'm assuming they can be separated for breeding purposes, and it's a really good size for them. And as our devilish little friend disappears, we'll make our way around to the zoo's vivarium. This classic building opened in 1926, and it is a really old school reptile house. The zoo has a specific reptile house for larger reptiles, and this is for smaller reptiles and amphibians. So it's full of tiny little vivariums for some fascinating creatures and some very rare animals. This method of displaying a large number of animals in lots of small vivariums in an enclosed space is definitely no longer in fashion, but with the majority of reptiles being very sedentary and the amphibians being absolutely tiny, I think it worked pretty well here, though it definitely wasn't my favourite part of the zoo. I mentioned the larger reptile house, and here it is, constructed in 1874, another beautiful building with some very 1874 style statues outside. It's currently closed for renovation, so we can't go inside today, but I actually visited it a few years ago, and whilst dated inside, I imagine it's going to look a lot better after the renovation. Back in the present day, we have our final classic hoofstock habitat for the West Caucasian tur, a mountain-dwelling goat native to the western half of the Caucasus in Georgia and Russia. And that brings us to the end of the western part of the zoo with a habitat for eastern grey kangaroo. This one's pretty sizable. There's also a little wallaby habitat up here, which I saw on the map but couldn't work out a way to get to, and later discovered it's actually outside the zoo. Anyone in the park can just wander in and see the wallabies. We're going to make our way now to the zoo's next landmark, the Grand Aviary. On the way there, there's a very cute little enclosure for pygmy goat and the enormous Asian cattle, the Gaur. This is a very old aviary, but very big, especially considering when it was built, and these days it's a walkthrough, so we can come in here and see a number of different species, including demoiselle cranes, little egrets, and the Eurasian stone curlews. This leafy path here is what most of this zoo looks like. It's so beautiful, and we're going to use it to get to the eastern part of the zoo, with the first enclosure for greater Rhea and Vicuna, a classic combination of South American animals. Although I've got to say, this is not the most inspiring habitat in the zoo, I'm going to be honest with you. Just kind of a dusty area, but it brightened up when I found this little dude, a leucistic Rhea. Never seen one of these before. They are really, really gorgeous. That completely white coat. And luckily for him, that striking coat is not going to result in him being picked off by a puma while he's living in the menagerie. Next to them is one of the highlights of the zoo for me, an old but sizable habitat for the fascinating Sichuan Takin. One of the things you really notice in this zoo is the old iron bars and mesh on most of the habitats, which went out of fashion in the zoo world a long time ago. And whilst obviously you get a much more natural view if you're looking over a moat or through glass, there is something that these bars enable you to do, which is to get this close to these animals with just open air and a few bars between you and them. And it is a really different experience to looking at them through glass or seeing them 100 meters away over a moat or whatever. I have never been this close to a Takin in my life, and I can't imagine I ever will be again. And perhaps there's a case to have more of these old school barriers in zoos. Now, from one beautiful animal to another, the Arabian Oryx. I've been fascinated with these ever since I saw them at London Zoo when I was a kid. They are just absolutely stunning, with their white coats and their black stripes on their face. I think the Oryx family are amongst the most attractive of the ungulates, and whilst this habitat itself is nothing to write home about, their mere presence makes it well worth seeing. Beyond the Oryx is a row of aviaries primarily for owls. I'm a big fan of owls, even though they're nocturnal, so a quick turn of the head is probably the most you're going to see them do in a zoo. They're such fascinating creatures that I really enjoy seeing them, and they've got a great collection here with snowy Ural and spectacled owls. I think this is the first spectacled owl we've seen on the channel, and it also holds the Great Argus, a member of the pheasant family, and pretty noisy. This is a male making himself known. There's also something I really liked here. Next to the aviaries is this old structure. I don't know what its original purpose was, but it's now a bat house. They've got some bat boxes in here, so some of the wild bats of Paris get to sleep there. And on the other side of the path is an emu. Always fun to see these. They're such strange birds with their crazy hair and that blue flash on their neck. I think the zoo also keeps these in the kangaroo habitat that we saw earlier. And then there's a few smaller habitats for smaller animals, including Desmarest Hutia, which is a very large rodent. These can grow to 2 foot long and live in Cuba, and they are the largest of the Hutias. Unlike most rodents, these tend to live in pairs and are diurnal. As well as the Hutia, there's a habitat for an animal I've never seen before, the Corsac Fox, which is sadly a no-show today. I think they're nocturnal as well, so not a huge surprise. And then what I think is one of the most unique animals on the planet, the Malayan tapir. This is one of the most modern habitats in the zoo. It's a really good size, natural substrates, subtle fencing. They've got a pool, as well as their indoor house, loads of space to walk around, although the way they're walking is very strange. Now, I've not seen Malayan tapirs kind of up and about that often, so I'm not sure if this is normal or not, but would love to know what is going on with this walk here. Let me know in the comments if you know more than I do. And we will walk our way around to the next habitat, which is for an animal that has become much more popular over the last few years, the Pallas cat. Despite 5 visits throughout the day and the zoo placing some food out, we didn't get to see them. But stay tuned to this channel because I've just come back from the Netherlands where I had the most amazing experience with a Pallas cat ever, and that will be on the channel soon. We have arrived at the last area in the zoo, the Ménagerie or monkey house. This is another amazing building dating from 1934. Although I've got to say the outside is a lot more impressive than the inside. This is an incredibly dated enclosure. However, the zoo are well aware of that. And as you watch this, they should have just opened a brand new orangutan house. I'm going to show you that in a second. How adorable is this Lahorst monkey munching away on a bit of lettuce? The orangs that you see here will be moving into a very modern, much bigger habitat that's much more suitable for them, which will enable the zoo to reconfigure the remaining parts of the monkey house to make it much more suitable for the remaining monkeys. This is the new house here. They're going to have 2,255 cubic meters of space and infinity pools. I want an infinity pool. That is the future of the menagerie. I hope you enjoyed seeing the present. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you again next month for another zoo tour.